Because I didn't want to thin down too much Unstable's mechanics and strength, I decided that only 1/5 of the cube would be composed of Unglued and Unhinged cards. And because I wanted those cards to help create each time a unique draft or sealed experience, I didn't want them to show up as often as regular Unstable cards. So with only one exception, I put 3 copies of each previous Unset's commons that I selected, and 2 copies of each uncommons of the previous unsets that I selected. But before I show you the cards I selected, let me quickly tell you what were my selection criteria. I didn't include artists' mechanics cards because of the mixing of 3 sets. I think this keyword works best with a single set, and even though I think it could work, I was not really interested in it. I didn't want to include half cost or half power toughness stuff, because when I tried, I felt like you had to put too many of it to be relevant. Otherwise, cards with 0.5 toughness are just busted and half mana doesn't really do anything. Last but not least, Jahzzar cards. As my group of players is French, putting those cards wouldn't have been fun, because I couldn't just force everyone to speak English, and I didn't want to give everyone a list of errata with each Jahzzar's word exact translation. But if you are a native English speaker and if your group of players is, I definitely recommend Jahzzar cards. So here are the cards of the previous unsets that I selected. As I said in the first video, because of the greater number of rares and because, let's face it, some cards here are just totally busted and I wanted this cube to be fun but to be a real game of Magic, I had to increase the number of removals just to keep some sort of balance. Unsets offer their fair share of wacky keywords or gameplay. For those who play quite often to Magic, weird effects are some kind of childlike fun. Unsets are also the opportunity to play Magic while having the feeling of playing another wacky party board game. Last, Unsets cards were also useful to fix some unstable issues or just to help other unstable cards functioning, like counters, die rolls, mana fixing. Without some of those cards, as luck would have it, is pretty much useless. So now let me tell you a little bit about the rares coming from previous unsets. First, Ants Run, because it's just so much fun. As Wumpen is another removal, but a removal that can affect every player in every games, so that's pretty awesome. Bingo! Bingo is just one of those cards where you just aren't playing Magic anymore, but can turn into a great creature and make some stuff in a real Magic game, so I thought that was a great choice. Enter the Dungeon. I'm a big fan of the countdown is at 1, and I wanted to include another card that would allow players to dive into another game of Magic, like a sub-game of Magic, just like the Matrix, you know? And this card is pretty awesome, and the fact that you are playing under the table is weird, so it had to be in the cube. Greater Morphling is one of those joke cards that are just fantastic. I mean, this card does everything. It almost does the coffee. If you have Greater Morphling, you have to play it and just watch at your opponent's face when you play it and when you activate each one of its abilities. That's just fantastic. Letter Bomb is quite a lot of fun too. I mean, you never know when it's gonna happen, but you know it's gonna happen, and it punishes blue decks and draw decks. And because I put some great cards, some great blue cards in this cube, I wanted to kind of punish those blue players just for running into too much cards and too many draw steps, maybe. Pointy Finger of Doom is one of those removals I had to add to the cube, but it's not really a removal because of its variance, and thus I think that's a real good card for this cube because it's fun and it's powerful. Because I decided to put 1.5 rares per pack, I had to somewhat mitigate the power of those rares in the games. So Rare Be Gone is a way to deal with those rares and just to punish players for playing too many rares. Staying Power is a card that just makes people crazy. You have to basically note at everything that's happening during turns, just not to forget them. And for the few first turns, it's okay, but if it stays on the battlefield, you're just gonna go mad, and that's just fantastic to see players scratch their heads and try to remember what was going on a few turns earlier. Uktabi Kong is not a really fun card if you don't know about the little story that goes behind the art. By the way, if you don't know about the story of this art, I really encourage you to search on the internet and find it. But Uktabi Kong is not here for the card itself, it's here because first, an 8/8 trample for 8 is powerful, you know, and because this cube just has so many powerful artifacts, this is kind of a wrath. It destroys contraptions, it destroys tokens, it destroys artifacts. I mean, this card is just a wrath plus an 8/8 trample. Yet another Ether Vortex. Well, that's a card that's quite interesting. I mean, of course, it's a great card in an aggro deck, but this could turn up pretty badly for you if your opponent is a control deck or a mid-range deck and they are planning on casting huge creatures and you didn't know it, and you have this huge creature coming from your opponent's library on the field with haste, and maybe you will regret casting this card, maybe it will get you a ton of card advantage and power, but you never really know, it's kind of a gamble. Alright, Jahzzar Abyss. I really don't know how I'm supposed to pronounce this card. So Jahzzar Abyss is another removal I had to add to this cube, but it's not really a removal because it will end up killing your creatures too, so it will lead to some really odd plays and unnatural plays, because sometimes you will want to kill your opponent, but you won't be able to because you will have to cast some other cards, other creatures in your hand before, just to ensure your great creature, your kill, is gonna survive. Blacker Lotus is just a way to be sure that players can cast Urza if they want to play it and if they don't have enough secret bases. It's also a great mana fixer and a great mana accelerator, so there's no real point in not playing it. And this is a joke on the most famous card of Magic, so I think you have to put it in your unsets queue. Free for All is one of those wacky cards that I just absolutely wanted to play. This is a great card for a control deck, but that could also be just a total waste, and if you rely too much on this, you can just end up losing, because if your opponent is lucky, they will just get back the most powerful creatures and let you with the junk. Jalum Grifter is one of those cards where you're not playing Magic anymore. I mean, you're basically playing some sort of games you are playing at fairs, and it has a real impact on the game. I mean, this card can totally change the game, and if you were behind, you can just get above and win the game thanks to this little magic trick or whatever. So I think that would be a lot of fun during the games. There's not much to say about Landfill except that it's somewhat similar to Slaying Mantis, and people really like generally to play with their cards and throwing them and just trying to throw them at someone's face. So I think Landfill is a great addition to the cube. What Magic player never thought, oh, I have this card in my deck, but I won't draw it, and that's such a waste because it would have won me the game. Well, with Mine, you have the opportunity to draw your entire library and play with it. So I think that's a great green card, but it's also worth splashing. I mean, that's really fun just to play with your entire library and selecting the card you need to win the game on the spot, and just see basically who has the greatest card in their deck. Mirror is basically replacing everything a Magic version F, at least its last effects. Because you are not switching decks and permanents and life points each end step, but only once, and you have to be very strategic about when you're activating it and casting it, because once you cast it, your opponent won't continue attacking and dealing you damages, so you really have to play a weird game of Magic in order to take profit of Mirror. Piracy is the only non-unset card, and I put it in this queue because I'm a blue control player and I wanted a card that would allow blue players just to do some extremely weird and powerful stuff. I did the same thing that I did with Jahzzar, and I made a slight change to the oracle and the text of the card. And in my cube, piracy doesn't only allow you to tap others people mana to cast spells, but also to activate abilities. So with piracy you can cast Jahzzar, but you can also activate your everything magic abilities or other cards abilities, and that will be some great moments of magic, I think. Yeah, my friend, that's not over. Come on, didn't you realize that the cube was 4 cards short? Come on. So why wait until the end of the video to present those 4 cards? I mean, we already presented the 72 rares, and we already presented the cards we selected in Unglued and Unhinged. So what are those 4 cards? Well, you may not know it, but originally there was supposed to be an Unglued 2. So I picked 2 cards from this non-printed Unglued 2 and put them in the cube. And because those cards don't have an official rarity, I decided to put them in the uncommon slot. So here are the 4 cards, so 2 copies of each, that I decided to put in the cube. So here are Some Fat Pants and Poodle Boy. Some Fat Pants is one of those cards that I really like because they give you the impression of not being playing Magic anymore, but rather being playing some sort of wacky party game. Poodle Boy is so ugly, I mean, look at this art. This is just hilarious and awesome. And the text is hilarious too, I mean, that's a high variance card, and you may end up with your best card in your deck, or just being stuck with this stupid creature that's useless, let's face it. So I hope this video helped you maybe having some more ideas for your cube, or even trying this one. Even though unsets are not the most valuable Magic product on the market, I think that's really important sometimes just to step aside from competitive Magic and from tournaments and from winning, and just remembering that Magic is first of all a game designed to have fun. I hope you enjoyed this video and see you in the next one. Bye bye!